They said sit in the back. Then the host paused to thank me for the venue donation. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as he stepped through the cracked, graffiti-tagged entrance of the old Community Arts Center. The place was a ghost from the city's past. Walls swollen with peeling paint, floors creaking like they whispered secrets, dusty beams casting weird shadows under flickering lights. He had poured everything he had into fixing it up, breathing life back into this forgotten space in a neighborhood soaked with tension and history. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, inclusion, diversity, hope. But the second he showed his face at the front door, a tense voice hissed low enough for only him to hear. "You'll need to sit in the back." His breath caught, the words like a punch to the solar plexus. His fists clenched so tight, his nails bit into his palms. Back? The word echoed, sharp and cold. Under the buzz of distant chatter. For a second, Marcus froze. His legs trembled, but he forced himself not to stumble. The crowd parted like a cautious sea, some faces flickering with unease, others chipper, as if this was just another night out. Moving toward the back, Marcus caught the low hum of whispers. Did you hear what they said to him? This is his place. No way. The walls seemed to tighten around him, the weight of old grudges settling like dust on his skin. Then the host's voice cut through the buzz like thunder. Loud, clear. Before we dive in tonight, a huge thank you to Marcus Williams. Without his donation of this very space, none of this would be possible. A hush rolled over the room, thick and sharp. Eyes snapped back to Marcus. The tension cracked like lightning. Some faces lit up with pride. Others scowled, jaws clenched. Marcus felt a rush, his heart pounding so loud he could swear it filled the silence. A lump sat heavy in his throat. He swallowed hard. The warmth of the spotlight clashed with the icy sting of that whispered command. Sitting in the back suddenly felt like a lifetime behind him. But as the crowd shifted, chunks of whispered support grew louder. A famous MC, known for calling out the city's dirty little secrets, strode up beside the host and fixed Marcus with a look sharp as knives and kind as fire. "This man," the MC said, voice booming through the cracked speakers, "gave us back more than a building. He gave us a chance. Let's make sure we don't let history repeat itself tonight." The crowd moved, a swell of nods, murmurs, some cheers, while Marcus's mind spun faster than the flashing lights. Beautiful, terrible, complicated, just like this city. And then, from the shadows near the old stage, a whispered threat slithered in the air. An anonymous donor promising to spill long-buried truths about the community's past. Secrets too sharp to ignore. Marcus's fingers trembled. His chest tightened. The weight of the night bore down, thick with unspoken choices. What if those secrets tore this fragile hope apart? What if revealing them meant losing everything and everyone he loved? As the crowd leapt between celebration and suspicion, Marcus stumbled on a revelation he never expected. Family ties reaching deep into the city's tangled power. Faces stared back from old photos, shadows moving in corners of memories he barely knew he had. The night was far from over. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're there, leave that powerful like. That helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments. I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Marcus felt the weight of the crowd's gaze, an invisible tide pulling him into its depths. The cheers for his contribution rang hollow against the whispers that clung to the air like thick smoke. He took a shaky breath, trying to steady his racing heart. The energy shifted, crackling with tension, as the MC pointed to him. But then there was a sudden scream, a piercing sound that sliced through the buzz. Someone darted in from the side, a figure clad in black, face hidden beneath a hood. The crowd froze, faces painted with confusion and fear. The unexpected presence felt like a match thrown into a room doused in gasoline. "Get back!" the intruder shouted, voice harsh and demanding. Panic rippled through the room, a collective gasp, followed by the sound of chairs scraping, footsteps scrambling. As Marcus instinctively moved away from the stunt, the whispers turned into chaotic murmurs. What's happening? Is this a joke? His eyes flicked to the host, who seemed equally stunned, the poised smile vanishing from his lips. "Stay where you are," the figure commanded, pulling something from a bag. A flash of metal glinted under the flickering lights. It was a microphone, but not just for show. The buzzing seemed to resonate with the tension in the air, making Marcus's heart pound even faster. Noticing this, the crowd began edging back, unsure whether to flee or stay. And then, before anyone could react, the intruder pressed a button on the device. A loud static buzz filled the room, drowning out everything else. It was as if someone had torn through the veil of normalcy, exposing raw nerves. "Listen to me," they shouted, not just addressing the crowd, but Marcus himself. "This man," they said, pointing to Marcus with a trembling hand, "is hiding something from you." A chill shot down Marcus's spine. He opened his mouth to deflect, to deny, but words failed him. The crowd shifted uneasily like a storm-worn tide. "Open your eyes," the hooded figure continued, voice not just loud, but laced with desperation. "His family has made deals. Deals that built prisons, not homes. He's the son of a man who turned his back on us." Gasps echoed through the space. Shock settled like thick fog, obscuring the unsteady ground beneath Marcus's feet. The accusations hung heavy in the air, as he felt eyes slice into him. A swarm of judgment, disbelief, and anger. Questions flooded his mind. Was it true? He thought of family dinners, of blurred memories, nestled between love and betrayal. "Marcus!" someone shouted from the crowd. Joyce, an old friend from the neighborhood. "Is it true?" His throat tightened. He had always known his father was involved in something unsavory. But this was different. This was public, searing. Wordless shame washed over him. And just as he struggled to form a response, the figure suddenly pulled off their hood. Marcus's heart plummeted. It was Avery, someone he thought he could trust, a fellow community advocate. "I thought you were fighting for us," she cried, the pain etched across her face. "But you're one of them." The crowd erupted in a frenzy of whispers, emotions teetering between fury and disbelief. Marcus's mind raced as he looked around, feeling every accusatory stare. Family ties were unraveling faster than he could untangle them, threads of loyalty and betrayal weaving into chaos. "Marcus!" Avery screamed again, voice cracking. "You owe it to us to tell the truth. Don't hide behind that donation. Change starts with honesty." Marcus's chest tightened. Was she right? The secrets threatened to consume him, but revealing them could change everything. Could he really face what his father had done? Could he risk losing the very community he'd worked to uplift? As the crowd fluctuated between admiration and resentment, Marcus stood frozen. The night was no longer a celebration. It was a reckoning, an ultimatum. And he had to decide, stand and fight for his place among them, or let the shadows of his past swallow him whole. Questions loomed heavy as the clamor of the crowd surged around him. Would the truth bring healing, or would it shatter the fragile hope he had built? The air buzzed with confusion, a taut string ready to snap. Marcus felt a tornado of emotions whirl inside him, guilt and rage swirling like a storm. He couldn't look away from Avery, her expression a mirror of betrayal. The crowd was ready to erupt, voices blending into a single physical force, pushing him away. "Marcus!" Joyce shouted again, the urgency in her voice, snapping him back to the chaos. "What's happening?" Sweat trickled down his forehead. He wanted to scream that he was more than his father's shadows, more than the rumors clinging to his name. But the words crushed in his throat, weighed down by a past he couldn't escape. Avery's eyes blazed with fury, a fire ignited by truth. "You can't hide! Not anymore!" And just like that, another voice cut through the air. Not from the crowd, but from the back of the room. "Let him speak!" The room fell silent. A figure pushed through the throng, confidence radiating from them. It was Ms. Harper, an older activist known for her sharp tongue and fierce loyalty. She'd always fought for the people, fiercely. The crowd parted as she approached, her gaze unyielding. "What's happening here is more than just one man's family. It's about us, our history," she declared, voice ringing with a powerful steadiness. "If we're going to heal, we need the whole truth, Marcus. Every last drop." The weight of her words settled on him, an ankle and a chain. Could he really expose everything? His heart raced. He steadied his posture, preparing to speak. Just as he opened his mouth, a loud crash shattered the moment. A window on the far side of the room exploded, glass shards raining down as a group of masked figures stormed in. They were dressed in dark clothing, faces obscured, carrying protest signs and batons. The air thickened with shock and confusion. A collective gasp rolled through the crowd. "Down with the past!" one of them shouted, voice clear and fierce. "Down with the lies!" Marcus's breath quickened. The energy from the crowd shifted, fear creeping in like a cold draft. He felt trapped, wedged between the accusation of his family ties and an unforeseen invasion. The masked figures surged, their chants like thunder reverberating through the room. They moved toward the stage, weaving through the panicked crowd. "We want the truth," someone screamed from the back. "Shut this place down." "Everything is connected," another shouted. "You think the people don't know? They're just waiting for you to admit it." Then, as if the universe twisted for one electrifying moment, one of the masked figures joked off their hood. A shockwave rocked through the space. It was Ray, Marcus's childhood friend, the one he thought had faded into the fringes. "Ray?" Marcus breathed, disbelief etched in his features. The crowd murmured, swinging between confusion and revelation. Ray's eyes burned bright, filled with a resolve he'd never seen before. "Marcus," he said, voice steady, "you left us. You've been living a lie for too long. It's time to wake up, time to face the truth." The room pulsed with tension, the atmosphere so thick it felt like a weight pressing down on Marcus's chest. He felt the eyes of everyone on him, expectations crackling like static. The panic morphed quickly into chaos as the rest of the masked figures moved closer. People surged backward, bumping against Marcus, the crush of bodies disorienting him. Shouts erupted, fear rippling like a wave in the crowd. And just as the chaos threatened to swallow him whole, a blinding light filled the room, a flash from outside. An explosion rocked the street. The ground quaked, and screaming erupted from every direction. People dove for cover. It felt like the world was tearing apart. Marcus stood frozen, shock wrapping around him like a blanket. As he stumbled back, he caught Avery's terrified gaze. The weight of unspoken truths pressed down, heavier than ever. The night, once bright with hope, spiraled into darkness. Marcus's heart raced as everything he thought he knew crumbled around him, leaving only shadows and whispers in its wake. What had he stepped into? Would the destruction reveal the truth, or bury it forever? The explosion rocked the room, sending chairs tumbling and bodies sprawling. Everyone ducked low, desperate to escape the chaos, but Marcus was frozen. His heart raced. The screams around him surged and swelled, a cacophony of fear. "Marcus!" Avery's voice pierced through the panic, a pleading sound that cut into the deafening chaos. He glanced toward her, desperation etched into her features, eyes wide with fear. The world spun, but he felt an undeniable pull to her. Ray stood at the forefront of the masked figures, leaning into the chaos. "Stop! Listen!" He shouted, his voice rising above the din. "This isn't what we wanted!" The crowd was a sea of confusion and panic. Faces toned toward the marred stage, where the remnants of Marcus's shattered night lay exposed. The truth hung in the air, but no one seemed ready to grasp it. Then there was another crash. The doors at the back of the room burst open, and two more figures entered, a man and a woman. They were not masked, but their looks screamed authority. The woman, dressed in tailored black, carried an air of undeniable power. "Everyone, calm down," she commanded. Her voice cut through the noise, sharper than glass. The chaos stuttered. People stopped, heads pivoting toward her, uncertain. "Who are you?" someone shouted from the crowd, distrust coating the words. "I'm Detective Harris," she stated coldly, fixing her gaze on Marcus. "And I need to speak with you about your father." Shock collided with confusion. His past bubbled to the surface, threatening to drag him under. The chaotic moment shifted. Eyes were now on Marcus, judgment looming. The weight of his father's legacy loomed large, anchoring him in place. "My father?" he managed, voice barely a whisper. A sense of impending doom began to settle around him. "Yes," she said, stepping forward. "He's been involved in something much bigger, and we need your help to expose it." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Whispers swirled like storm clouds. "He's just a man, not a monster." "The lies surround your family, Marcus," Detective Harris pressed. "And it's your chance to make things right. We have evidence. Evidence that will change everything." His breath quickened. People around him shifted again, eyes narrowing, glances exchanged. Avery's features were a mix of anger and something softer. "What are you saying?" she challenged, fists clenched. "Your values, your integrity. Your father has twisted them into something ugly," the detective pressed, a hint of urgency in her voice. "But you have power in this moment," a muffled voice shouted from the back. "He's not responsible for his father's choices." The crowd's murmur rose, wavering between support and accusation. More chaos threatened to explode again, but then a tremor cut through the air. It wasn't just Marcus's heartbeat. It was something else. The lights flickered ominously above. The noise of the crowd supped into a hush as they sensed it too, a vibration that felt like danger. And just like that, the moment shattered. A figure burst through a side door, not masked, but wielding truth like a weapon. It was Frank, Marcus's father, the man he thought had abandoned him, the shadow he thought he had escaped. "Marcus," he bellowed, "listen, this isn't what you think." The crowd gasped. Confusion washed over faces. Marcus felt a mix of betrayal and disbelief. Frank's presence ignited a fire in Marcus's core. The truth he'd been trying to escape flooded back, washing over him in waves. You're the one! His voice was shaking. No! Frank rushed forward, hands raised in surrender. It's not about that. I didn't choose this life for you. The world spun around Marcus, a whirlwind of emotions crashing down. Everyone was staring, waiting for him to say something. Secrets danced in the air, waiting to shatter. In that heartbeat, he realized he didn't just carry his father's legacy. He was about to face it head on. What was truth? What was loyalty? What kind of man would he be? And then everything went dark as the lights flickered again. A deafening silence followed, leaving only the noise of breathing and hearts racing. What had just begun to unravel? The lights flickered ominously, plunging the room into shadow just as Marcus's heart raced. He stared at his father, lips parted, ready to shout, but no sound would come out. The crowd held their breath, caught in a limbo of confusion and disbelief. "Marcus!" Frank's voice boomed again, desperation slicing through the tension. "I can explain. You have to listen to me." But before he could finish, another loud crash echoed from outside, the sound rattling the windows as more masked figures closed in. The room felt small and constricting, as if the very walls were pressing down on them. Marcus felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. Fear gripped him tight, and he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to shatter. Suddenly, the power cut entirely. Darkness enveloped the room, swallowing. Panic took hold. People scrambled, shouts echoing in angry confusion. "Get out! We need to get out!" someone yelled. In that chaos, Marcus felt a tug on his arm, a firm grip. It was Avery, her eyes wide with urgency. "We can't stay here. Not with him." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the panic like a dagger. Marcus turned to Frank. "You said you wanted to protect me." His voice cracked. "What did you do?" Frank looked frazzled, words tangled in his mouth. "I came to help, son. You're not aware of everything. Don't let them sway your truth." The floor shook, and a distant roar rumbled, growing louder, overpowering the fear-driven shouts of the crowd. People were pushing toward the exit, their panic infectious. "What is happening?" Marcus yelled, trying to yank his arm away from Avery. Then, with a metallic screech, the doors blew open. The frigid air rushed in, swirling smoke and debris. A shadowy figure stood at the threshold, silhouetted by the streetlights outside, and before anyone could react, they hurled something, a flash grenade, into the room. An explosion of light and sound filled the space, blinding and deafening. Marcus stumbled, disoriented, as bodies collided around him. In the chaos, something heavy hit him in the chest, knocking him back. The force sent him sprawling to the ground, his breath knocked out of him. He gasped, struggling to fill his lungs, as thoughts swirled like leaves in a tempest. "Help! Get down!" screamed a voice, but it felt muted, far away. Everything was spinning, and darkness closed in again, wrapping around him like a shroud. And then he saw her, Avery. She was fighting through the wave of bodies, a stark look of determination on her face. "Marcus!" she screamed again, reaching for him. But he was swallowed by the crowd, lost in the chaos. Just as he began to rise, he caught a glimpse of a figure in the back, lifting a knife, an unmistakable glint reflecting the lights. It was Ray. "This ends now," he shouted, and in that instant, everything paused. The room fell silent, but for the gasping breaths of people grappling with fear. Blood drained from Marcus's face as the realization hit him. Ray wasn't there to hurt him, but to reveal the twisted ties that bound them together. "What do you mean?" Marcus rasped, confusion bleeding into dread. And then Ray hurled a piece of paper at Marcus's feet. It fluttered to the ground, bold letters printed across its surface. Your father's crimes, Marcus. Everything is in this file. You need to choose who you want to be. Marcus bent down to pick it up, hands shaking. The room throbbed with tension as the crowd swayed between escape and confrontation. But as he unfolded the paper, the lights crackled back to life, illuminating the chaos around him. What he saw made his heart plummet. It was a list of names. Associates of Frank. Families ripped apart by deals that defined their very community. And a name at the top that sent his world spiraling. His own mother. No, Marcus whispered, the words sticking in his throat. The room swirled, faces of those he thought he knew closing in, whispering accusations and disbelief. He dropped the paper as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Marcus, your family isn't just involved. They built this cycle. Avery shouted, her voice barely breaking through the chaos. You have to own this. You can't run. The smile on Frank's face twisted into something unrecognizable. Don't believe them, Marcus. But before he could finish, the overhead lights shattered. Glass rained down amidst another explosion. It felt like the ground trembled beneath him, shaking their very foundation. The room erupted into frantic screams as bodies surged forward. Everything he thought he knew began crumbling, relationships fracturing in real time. Trust hung by a thread, each secret unfurling as shadows danced grotesquely on the walls. And just like that, before he could process it all, before he could even react, Avery was gone, sucked into the crowd, her screams swallowed whole as the chaotic scene unfolded. Marcus, someone shouted, but he couldn't tell who. And the world dimmed again, as if a curtain had dropped, leaving him standing at the edge. Only one question remaining. Who could he trust in a world built on lies? Marcus stood there, the weight of the paper crumpling under his fingers. His father's face twisted into a mask of panic, desperation clawing at him. The air was thick, stifling. Everything felt poised to explode again. The crowd was alive with confusion and fear. Fists were clenched. Some people were shouting, and others were frozen, unsure of what to believe. He felt trapped between accusations and the truth he would. He shouted, but it felt weak. Then someone shouted from the back. This isn't just about him. It's about all of us. It was Joyce again, her voice cutting through the chaos. We all deserve the whole truth. He opened his mouth to respond, but then the lights flickered again, mere shadows left in the wake of his swirling thoughts. And then, like a thunderclap, a brilliant flash of light illuminated the room in a blinding burst. The crowd gasped collectively, faces wide with shock. In that moment of luminescence, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement in the corner. A figure darted forward, eyes filled with an intensity he didn't understand. And before anyone could react, they threw something, a small object that spiraled through the air like a comet. Duck, Ray shouted, but it was too late. The object hit the ground and exploded in a fiery blaze. The room ignited with a deafening roar. A shockwave surged through the space, knocking Marcus off his feet and back against the stage. His world swirled into chaos, filled with shards of bright light and deafening noise. What the hell? He gasped, struggling to comprehend what just happened. He blinked, trying to focus through the haze. As the tumult faded, Marcus scrambled to his feet. Flames climbed the walls, licking at the ceiling. Panic surged through the crowd. People screamed, their faces twisted in terror. The unity of the moment shattered like glass. Frank, Marcus shouted, searching for his father amidst the chaos. But then he saw something that turned his stomach. Wrapped in shadows near the entrance was another figure, tall and menacing, face hidden under a hood. That figure turned slightly, and Marcus's heart dropped. He knew that silhouette too well. "Dad? Marcus, no, get out now!" Frank yelled. His voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. And at that moment, the hooded figure pulled back the cloak, revealing a face that sent ice through Marcus's veins. It was his mother. The woman he had thought was long gone. The one he believed had walked out on them years ago. But she was there, eyes fierce, filled with a wild intensity. "Mom?" He blinked, but the reality was undeniable. She was standing there, caught between the chaos and the growing fire, a ghost from his past. Before he could process it, she took a step forward. "They've been lying to you for years, Marcus. Your father, he's not who you think he is. None of this is what it seems." Her voice was shaky but powerful, a siren call amidst the storm. The crowd surged forward, eyes darting between her and Frank, confusion painting their faces. "What?" Marcus felt the ground drop beneath him. Everything he'd known skewed violently. "Listen to her, Marcus," Frank shouted, panic rising. "She's not safe." "Safe?" Marcus's voice trembled. "You think I care about safety when my whole life is a lie? What did you do?" But the moment hung heavy, ignorance collapsing around them. "Together we can fix it." Frank's desperation only deepened the chasm of confusion in Marcus's heart. "Just trust me." But trust was a fragile thing, splintering like glass underfoot. "You've lied to me about everything." The flames grew, shadows danced wildly, and suddenly the weight of the world bore down on Marcus's shoulders. He stood at a crossroads, teetering between the past he thought he knew and the truth that threatened to swallow him whole. And then, with a surge of chaos, the ceiling above them cracked, a fiery piece raining down, dangerously close. "Get out!" Someone screamed, but he remained rooted, eyes locked on the woman who had been lost to him forever, her hand reaching out in desperation. "Marcus, we need you. We can't lose you. Again." But as he stared at her, wanting to trust, wanting to understand, the wall behind her suddenly collapsed. Debris tumbled, and amidst the chaos, the air filled with screams, confusion, and pure terror. What was happening? He wanted to believe her, wanted to forge a path through the shadows. But everything felt too dangerous, too volatile. He turned to see Ray. Anger burned in his eyes as he screamed, "We need to leave! It's a trap!" But the shadows took shape once more, and in that flight of chaos, Marcus made a split-second decision. One that might change everything. Before he could act, another crash sounded, this time from the roof. The world spun. Reality warped. His heart raced. The past, the present, and the future collided like a storm. And just as he thought it couldn't get worse, pieces of the ceiling fell, and a shadow engulfed him, shrouding him in darkness, leaving only questions spiraling in his mind. What truth did he dare to face? Who could he trust when the flames of betrayal licked at his heels, and the very ground beneath him began to crumble? Marcus stood there, disoriented by the chaos that swirled around him. The past few minutes felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. His heart stumbled as shadows twisted and turned, engulfing him with doubt. Just as with the flames licking the side of the room, he could feel the heat of betrayal threatening to consume him. "You just left us!" The weight of that felt like a boulder in his chest. "I had to protect you," she shouted, urgency seeping from every word. But just as clarity seemed to pulse through the air, the ground rumbled again, sending shivers of terror rippling through the crowd. "Get out! Now! Ray pushed toward the nearest exit, but the chaos only grew. The building felt alive, groaning, trembling. And then a blinding flash. More than just light. It washed over everything in the room. Disorienting, confounding. A shattering sound rang out, echoing off the walls. Tinny voices screamed in pain around him as everyone ducked for cover. Marcus flailed backward, feeling the heat and a violent rush of air sweep past him, nearly knocking him to the ground again. "Narcus, we need to go!" Avery's voice rose above the confusion, turning his gaze. She looked frantic, eyes wide as she grasped his arm, pulling him toward the exit. Just as they staggered backward, something, a glowing figure, flashed at the periphery of his vision. A bright light peeled away the veil of chaos. It was coming from the ceiling, a crack fissuring through the concrete. The air turned static, and then it happened. The figure exploded in a shower of sparks, revealing an urgent message projected across the wall in immense letters. "The time has come." Marcus stopped cold. What did that mean? The crowd halted. Silence blanketed the space, everyone's eyes widening as the words lingered, piercing through the chaos. This was no ordinary sign. It felt deliberate, calculated. "Look!" Someone pointed at the wall. "What is happening?" I don't know," Marcus stammered, eyes scanning the chaos, desperately trying to grasp what it all meant. This was out of control, beyond anything he could have imagined. And that's when the air shifted again. From behind the pulsing light, a second figure emerged. Tall, cloaked in shadows, their speech barely audible over the hum. "You've all been played," it croaked, voice dripping with urgency. "He's not who you think." "Who are you?" Frank shouted, the crackle of fear creeping into his voice. "Your deception runs deep," the figure said, stepping closer. The glare of the lights cast harsh angles on their face. But it was their eyes, glimmering with a truth Marcus recognized, that sent ice through his veins. And then, in an instant, a truth darker than he ever expected tumbled out. "Your father isn't the mastermind," they said. "It's you, Marcus." A gasp reverberated through the audience. The words hanging like a thick smog in the air. Reality shattered around him. He fell back against the wall, disbelief overriding every thought. "You're the one who holds the key. You don't even know it yet. Your past is a lie spun into something far more sinister." Marcus's world spun in dizzying circles, faces staring incredulously, each whisper echoing the same sentiment: betrayal. He looked at his father, eyes wide with panic. "What does this mean?" "No!" Frank screamed. But the crowd erupted in chaos, voices rising again, questions crashing down. "Why are you doing this?" someone called out. Confusion woven through the chaos. Heart pounding, Marcus felt trapped in a whirlwind of accusations, truths pulsing like an impending storm. Who do you believe when everything feels like smoke and mirrors? And just before anything could settle, another sound, a clap of thunder, or maybe a roar of anger erupted from outside, signaling something much worse. The world shifted again, and as reality blurred into quicksand, Marcus realized this was only the beginning. How could he confront a truth that turned him from the pawn to the monster? Marcus stood frozen, the air thick with tension, disbelief washing over him. The whispers around him turned into a swirling, chaotic storm as he processed what the cloaked figure had just said. His heart raced. Was it true? Was he tied to this ongoing cycle of lies? The crowd around him surged in confusion, faces etched with fear and anger. Frank shifted, glaring at the figure. "This isn't true," he barked, desperation carving deep lines into his face. But even in his denial, the words hung in the air like an unbroken spell. Marcus could feel disbelief morphing into something more sinister. "Marcus, you know the truth. You just have to look," the figure urged, their voice echoing in his mind, igniting a flicker of recognition. Just then, another explosion rocked the building. The walls shuddered. A deafening roar filled the space as chaos erupted again. Dust and debris rained down, and the lights flickered like they were caught in a fight between darkness and light. "Everyone, out, now!" someone yelled, a frantic urgency sparking in their voice. But Marcus couldn't move. He felt trapped by the weight of what lay before him. Confusion muddled his thoughts. "What truth?" he yelled back, seeking clarity amid the chaos. "What do you mean?" The figures stepped closer, their features coming into view, lit by the sporadic flashes of light and fire. It was then that a distant scream cut through the noise, a different sound, sharper and laden with fear. "Marcus!" Avery's voice broke through like a lifeline, pleading for his attention. Her eyes were wide, filled with frantic urgency, and she pointed toward the back of the room where an exit had been partially blocked. "We need to go. This place is coming down." In that moment, the air shifted again, filled with an unnatural chill. A stark realization clawed its way into Marcus's mind. He reached out for Avery, just as a shadow lurked behind her. Another masked figure, darting in, intent on something. "Watch out!" Marcus shouted, but it was too late. The figure lunged, and the crowd erupted in panic again. Bodies scrambling to escape. In the fray, a loud bang, followed by cracking glass, rained down. And in a horrified blur, he watched as Ray, tangled in the chaos, shoved through the tumult. Determination etched into every line of his face. "I didn't." But his words were cut off, abruptly stifled, as the masked figure collided with him, sending them both tumbling to the ground. A swirl of flailing limbs and gasps. "Stop! Get off him!" Marcus yelled, his heart pounding as he fought against the surging crowd. In that instant, he felt a sudden pang of adrenaline surging through him. With a desperate burst of strength, Marcus pushed forward, intent on reaching Ray. But then, another shock, another scream. This time, it was quieter, yet it cut through the chaos like a knife. And then, the figure shrouded in darkness, the one who spoke of the lies, whirled around, revealing an unmistakable face beneath the hood. Marcus's breath caught. "Avery?" But Avery shook her head, confusion painted across her features. "No, it's not me, it's—" But the moment hung in eternity. Then the shadowy figure slowly pulled off their hood, revealing a face Marcus hadn't seen in years. "What?" The breath left him. "You?" His heart raced, a mix of pain and disbelief. It was his long-lost sibling, the one he thought had vanished. And suddenly, everything, the whispers, the secrets, the lies, came crashing down around him like an avalanche. The threads connecting their lives twisted tighter, weaving a tapestry of betrayal and confusion. "Marcus, I'm sorry. We didn't know. We were trying to protect you," they said, eyes filled with regret. But the ground shook again, not from the fraying building, but from a surge of collective emotion, an eruption of truth. With a tremor in the air, Marcus realized this journey was only the beginning of something darker. As he stared into familiar eyes, the weight of history pressing down, the air thick with tension and urgency, he understood. Nothing was what it seemed. And just like that, light exploded outside the broken windows, illuminating silhouettes, shapes once hidden, now laid bare. Shadows danced frenetically, and he wondered, had they been pawns in a game much larger than themselves? But before he could question anything further, the building lurched violently, and dust rained down in a blinding haze. The last thing he saw was fear gripping the faces around him, before all went dark and doubt swallowed him whole, leaving him gasping for the truth, whatever that might be. The darkness engulfed Marcus, a thick fog of confusion and dread. He stumbled back, heart hammering, eyes darting from Frank to the figure that was once his sibling. You? He struggled to reconcile what he saw with what he felt. You've been here all along? Before a response could be uttered, the ceiling creaked ominously, and the air thickened with electric tension. Then, with a deafening roar, another section of the structure began to collapse. This time, it wasn't just a portion of the roof. It was the very foundation of their reality. The ground shook violently, throwing Marcus to his knees. He felt his heart in his throat as screams erupted again, echoing painfully in his ears. His thoughts scattered, lost in the noise. "Get out! Now!" A shout cut through, this time from Ray, who was struggling to pull someone from the rubble. "Marcus! We need to save them!" Ray's panic electrified the air, and before Marcus could respond, the last remnants of the roof gave way. With a deafening crash, everything went black. Time fractured. There was nothing but darkness and chaos. Then, it was as if reality snapped back. He blinked, desperately trying to clear the dust from his eyes. The room was filled with panic-fueled chaos, and as he tried to stand, he felt something shift underneath him. A pressure he hadn't anticipated. He brushed the rubble aside, pushing up with every ounce of strength. When the dust cleared, he gasped. He wasn't alone. In the shadows, a figure lay crumpled on the ground. A wave of recognition washed over him. It was Avery. "Avery!" he gasped, rushing toward her. But as he knelt beside her, he noticed the twisted way her body was positioned. Glass shards glinting cruelly in the flickering light. His heart sank as he caught sight of her face. A mixture of pain and something else. Something haunting. And there, amidst the debris and dust, her eyes fluttered open, weak and distant. "I was trying to save you," she whispered. A strange smile cracking through the pain. "No, you have to hold on. We'll get you out of here." The desperation in his voice clawed at his throat. But then, a low rumble interrupted their moment. It came from within the shadows where the masked figure had just been. Suddenly, more figures emerged. They were not masked, but familiar. Friends and neighbors, each with a face twisted in confusion and disbelief. "What's happening? Where's—" one shouted. Before he could respond, the tension grew palpable. Another figure stepped into the flickering light, and it was his mother again. But this time, there was a shadow behind her, pulsing with energy. The crowd froze. The figure beside her shifted, the dim light revealing a face Marcus hadn't seen for years. It was Frank, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a man in a sharp suit, his eyes gleaming with power. "Marcus," Frank said, desperation in his voice. "We need to talk, all of us. It's about your mother." "What?" he choked out, confusion transforming into anger. "You've lied to me my whole life!" The atmosphere crackled as the suited man stepped forward, a twisted smile creeping onto his face. "Lies? Oh dear boy. What if I told you this was all part of the plan?" "What plan?" The words stung and a lump grew in Marcus's throat. The crowd murmured, panic creeping back in like a creeping fog. And then the world erupted around them again. The ceiling was collapsing faster now, the sound deafening. The floor shook and people screamed. "No, we can't lose anyone else," Ray shouted, grabbing Marcus's arm, trying to pull him toward safety. But he felt anchored to the chaos unfolding before him, eyes wide, straining to understand. Before he could take a breath, the suited man leaned in closer, his words sharp. "You are the key, Marcus. You don't even know the legacy you've inherited." No, he wouldn't be part of this. Just then, amidst the chaos, Avery groaned softly, and the moment snapped back to him. "Marcus, the truth." Her voice was a whisper, but the urgency clawed at his chest. "You have to know." Before she finished, a blinding light erupted from the shadows, overwhelming everything. It washed over the room, illuminating secrets buried so deep they felt tangible. In that moment, he realized something monumental. Everything, all the lies, all the chaos, was leading to this. And just like that, with one resounding crash, the floor beneath him gave way, spilling him into the unknown. The last thing he saw was the desperate look in Avery's eyes. And all at once, he knew that the truth would change everything. As darkness enveloped him, the chaos echoed in his mind. Who was he really, and what had he truly inherited? The mystery hung like smoke in the air, leaving him breathless and desperate to understand. Marcus felt the ground vanish beneath him. Darkness swallowed him whole, and as he fell, he tumbled into panic. A whirl of thoughts spun in his mind, memories flashing like old film reels. His father, secrets, Avery's face fading away as the chaos erupted. And then, impact. It was jarring, like waking up from a nightmare suddenly. But this wasn't a dream. Marcus! Hey! Avery's voice punctured the thick fog. He glanced up, relief flooding him. She was there, crouched close, her face a mask of concern. "What happened?" he croaked, trying to sit up. His body ached. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but—" She paused, the urgency in her voice sliding into fear. "We need to move. They're coming." The words sent a shiver down his spine. "Who?" But before she could answer, the ground shook again. Sirens wailed outside, drowning out the chaos inside. Panic prickled at his skin, adrenaline racing. "We can't stay here." He pulled her close, heart pounding. "Not without the others," she yelled back. But just as he thought they could escape, the figure, his sibling, stepped into view, face taut with desperation. "We need to talk," they urged, positioning themselves between Marcus and their mother, who was still shadowed somewhere behind the wreckage. "Talk about what?" Marcus snapped, confusion morphing into anger. There was no time for more secrets. Everything. Their voice trembled, and Marcus felt the walls close in around him. Then, a blinding light burst forth from the back, illuminating the space. The masked figure from before reappeared, and something about them felt more familiar now, as if pieces were clicking. "Enough," they barked, eyes locking onto Marcus. "You need to know the truth." "What truth?" he shouted back, frustration boiling over. "This isn't just about your family. It's about you. You are the center of everything. The power, the legacy, it's all been passed to you without your knowing." Before he could process that, another crash erupted. The entrance crumbled before them. Dust swirled aggressively, and suddenly, amid the chaos, a figure burst through, charging into the chaos. "Someone help!" they shouted, but it was a face Marcus never expected. Derek? It was his childhood friend, rushing in with wild eyes, gasping for breath. In his hands was a file, thick and bursting with papers. "I was trying to warn everyone, but it was madness now." Frank appeared behind Marcus, shaking, fear radiating from him. "You don't understand. They're coming for your mother. Is that why you lied?" Derek yelled, waving the file like a lifeline. "Because the truth is, she's been part of this all along." A collective gasp echoed through the crowd, eyes darting between Frank and the file. Marcus felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. "What do you mean?" Marcus twisted, panic flooding his veins. "What did she do?" "They're all in this together," Derek shouted, voice cracking. "Your mother, this whole family business, is built on corruption and lies. You're in too deep." "Marcus." Time stopped. The pieces fell into place in the most gut-wrenching way. He looked from Derek to Avery, unable to comprehend. No, he breathed. It can't be true. But the truth hung, heavy and suffocating. As questions swirled, the ceiling groaned, cracks zigzagging like fractures across his heart. The building shook, and everything aligned in twisted clarity. From behind, an explosion suddenly rocked the room again. But this time, the shockwave blasted them out of the building entirely. Marcus tumbled backward, landing hard on the ground outside. Dust and smoke overwhelming him. Panic surged as sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing across disbelieving faces. "Get away!" he yelled, scrambling to his feet. But in the crowd, a strange presence loomed. The suited man reemerged. You have no idea what's coming for you. It hit him like a physical blow. Everything he thought he knew twisted into something unrecognizable. Relationships shattered before his eyes as realization gripped him. And then, all at once, the shocking truth unveiled itself. Everything, the lies, the secrets, his family history, had been orchestrated by someone he never suspected. There, amidst the chaos, stood his own mother, cloaked in shadow, eyes flickering with recognition. "It was all for you, Marcus, to protect you." But before she could finish, a blinding flash surrounded them, the world dissolving into chaos again, and the ground beneath them rumbled violently. "Run!" he screamed, heart racing. But in that moment of impending doom, he wasn't just running from the building. He was fleeing from the undeniable truth of who he really was and what it meant for everyone he loved. The air trembled with the weight of shattered lives, and as he ran, he understood, nothing will